Good morning. Let me turn on this light here. Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for the 16th year of Changi, the 6th month and the 11th day by the heavenly calendar. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of China, Kyung Jin Moon. And let's go take our tour around the kingdom as we usually do. And this morning at the Chongpyeong Palace in Tennessee, it is 67 degrees right now and sunny. Getting up to 92 today, warm in times of clouds and sun. Tonight, 65, clear skies. Father's hometown, Cheongju, North Korea, currently 79 as they get into the evening, mostly cloudy. Right now, getting down to 75 tonight, cloudy, warm, and very humid. An evening shower in spots, followed by a couple of thunderstorms. Tomorrow, a high of 85, a thunderstorm around in the morning, then times of clouds and sun in the afternoon. Very humid. And then at the Cheongpyeong Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, currently 56 degrees and mostly sunny. Getting up to 86 today, sun through high clouds, air quality will be poor. Tonight, 62, clear to partly cloudy. At the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, 72, mostly cloudy right now. 85 for a high today, partly sunny and humid with a thunderstorm in parts of the area. Tonight, partly cloudy, a low of 73. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 81 and mostly clear, getting down to 77. Tonight, warm and humid with increasing clouds, but get this, tomorrow, very hot, variable cloudiness, 99 degrees for a high tomorrow at the Suncheon Palace in South Korea. At the Gunma Palaces in Japan, currently 83, passing evening shower to otherwise partly cloudy, warm and very humid, 77 for a low. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy, hot and humid, an afternoon thunderstorm in a couple of spots, and high of 95. Okay, 95. And then in Ilan, Taiwan, it is currently 83 degrees and clear, and increasing cloudiness as we go through the evening, 79 for a low. Tomorrow, a passing morning shower, then not as warm in the afternoon with rain heavy at times. Watch for flooding. High of 92 degrees for high tomorrow. So it looks like the Suncheon Palace takes the prize today. Let's go to Father's Word and let's see where we are today. Today we are in the book on earthly life in the spirit world, and chapter 6, which is titled Our Position and the let's see, how should I translate this? It's very simple, just a couple of words, but let's see, what is the position of us and the spirit world? Our position and the spirit world's position, something like that. Okay. All right. Let's look at chapter 1 and section 1, the first paragraph. Our generation is very brief. Let me turn on light here. Our generation is very brief. We got that much. Okay, here we go. And this single generation determines both the eternity and the single moment. If this generation is extended, it can be extended forever. But if it is broken, then it will be the beginning of a new heaven and earth from this point. So just like with a scale, it can go back and forth. It can go up and down, and it can determine what is going to happen. You are all resurrected bodies representing the faces of all of your ancestors. Okay. Praise God for that lesson this morning. the father's emphasizing the importance of the current generation or any particular generation that we belong to, even if you are watching this video, let's say 100 years from now, still your generation is in the same position where you are determining the future. And so you need to act wisely so that God's providence can continue. Okay. All right. Let's go and see what is happening. So there's been a lot of speculation about Xi Jinping. What's happening? Has he been deposed in secret? What is, is he just a figurehead now? And I've consistently said that these reports have no basis, actual factual basis that we can look at to go on. Well, we have something now. The BRICS, what is the BRICS are what? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Those are the countries that first began the BRICS. Of course, they've expanded since then. The BRICS are having their summit in Brazil beginning on Sunday, and Xi Jinping is not going to be there. Aha. That's very interesting. This is the first time that he's going to miss a BRICS summit, and it was always thought that and actually Putin also is not going to be there, but that's understandable. He has a warrant out for his arrest from the International Criminal Court, and Brazil is a signatory or member of the International Criminal Court. And so according to international law, if Putin shows up in Brazil, then Brazil is required to arrest him. And not that they necessarily would, but Putin visited Mongolia a while back, and Mongolia is also a signatory of the ICC, and Mongolia did not arrest him. And since then, apparently the ICC has been giving Mongolia a lot of grief. So it makes sense that Putin would choose not to attend the summit in Brazil so as not to give all kinds of problems for the communist government. It is effectively a communist government, the communist government in Brazil. But Xi Jinping is a different matter. Why is he absent? Even more interesting, China is really not giving us any, they're not trying to give us a answer that makes any sense. So it's a scheduling conflict. Why? Does he have a torture session where he's going to be tortured? Is that why? Is that the scheduling conflict that's going on? We don't know what the scheduling conflict is. Now other people, this could mean various things. It could mean a lot of things. And so we need to be careful not to assume that it means what we want it to mean. It could mean that the BRICS organization itself is becoming less and less important for China. And so Xi Jinping has just decided, you know what, it's not worth my time. BRICS, they've expanded too quickly and the cohesion is not working out. And so I don't want to go. Or it could mean that, in fact, Brazil's President Lula has scheduled a state dinner for the Indian Prime Minister Modi right after the BRICS summit ends. And Xi Jinping could be kind of put off by that. Hey, wait a second. I'm more important than India. What are you giving him a lavish state dinner for and not me? That could be it. That could be it. Or it could be that Xi Jinping is, not able to travel abroad because he's currently under house arrest or something like that, which these other reports have been claiming. So we don't know. But it is something that people are asking questions, and China is not giving us any answers. So we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, let's look at a few of these, or maybe one or two of the stories that deals with this. Leaders of Russia and China snub BRICS summit and sign group's value may be waning. And this is the Guardian. Remember Guardian? Guardian's our favorite Marxist newspaper that supports the Labour Party in the UK. So from the Marxist point of view here, okay, The rapid expansion of BRICS has diluted its coherence as a body, offering an ideological alternative to Western capitalism. There you go. You see, it's a Marxist paper. That's why they use a phrase like Western capitalism and also ideological. That's also a favorite word of communists. Okay. And let's see here. Russia and China are not sending their leaders to a BRICS summit starting in Brazil on Sunday, in what may be a sign that the group's recent expansion has reduced its ideological value to the two founding members. China's 72-year-old leader Xi Jinping has attended BRICS summits for the past 12 years. No official reason has been given for sending the premier, Li Qiang, other than scheduling conflicts. Russia's President Vladimir Putin is facing an international criminal court arrest warrant and may have decided not to travel to Rio to avoid embarrassing the summit hosts, who are signatories to the ICC statute. Mongolia has been in an acrimonious legal dispute with the ICC after it did not act on the warrant when Putin visited last year. Putin abandoned his plans to attend it. Yeah, we don't care about Putin. Here we go. Okay. BRICS, often described as the developing world's alternative to the G7 group of nations, has undergone a recent rapid expansion, but in the process has diluted its coherence as a body, offering an ideological alternative to the Western capitalism represented by the G7. Well, I'm not sure G7 represents Western capitalism. I would think that more. I think what is it? The Bilderberg Group. There you go. That I would see that's a much better representative of Western capitalism. The Bilderberg Group, and perhaps the Davos Group as well, World Economic Forum. I think they also represent Western. I mean, every year, they fly their private planes into Davos, right? And so I would say that they probably represent Western capitalism much better than the G7 group. All right, let's see here. If its founding members were Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, but the group last year expanded to include Indonesia, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, countries in various stages of economic development and with varying levels of antagonism towards the West. The additions skewed the body toward autocracy, leaving Brazil, South Africa, and India uneasy. I don't know why Brazil would be uneasy about that. They're an autocracy. South Africa is also an autocracy, basically. Brazil has said the BRICS grouping is just one sign of an emerging new world order. Speaking recently at the Overseas Development Institute, the former Brazilian foreign minister and current ambassador to London, Antonio Patriota, said Donald Trump's America First foreign policy would move the world order away from the U.S. as a superpower and towards a multipolar world with power spread more evenly. You think so? Where does power come from? Power comes from the dominance of the U.S. dollar, which still, despite what people are saying, it's still dominant. There is a trend maybe of less dominance, but it's still dominant. Power comes from military. Can you fly some B-2 bombers, a few thousand miles away and put a bunker buster bomb down a shaft, an air shaft, so that you blow up a country's nuclear facilities? Can you do that? Well, that's power. That's power. Power is also cultural. Okay. And are American movies still dominant in the world? I think so. Yeah, I think they are pretty dominant in the world. So right now, America's power is being challenged, but that challenge is not really at a significant level yet. You could say there are trends, but it's not yet at a significant level. Now, as I've been mentioning for a couple of days, America is undercutting itself. America is undercutting itself, especially with this new big beautiful bill that raises the debt limit by $5 trillion, for example, and in other ways where it would seem that the American system itself, as we approach the 250th year, may be reaching the end of its lifespan. And maybe America is in need of a new system. I think you can say that. Certainly, but anyway, when we talk about power, let's not get too distracted here. So anyway, power, American power. So okay. He added that new alliances were likely to develop that would challenge the current distribution of power. It's difficult to argue today that Europe converges with the US policy on trade or on security or on sustaining democracy, for example. So where there used to be one unique Western pole, now perhaps there are two. Brazil, an emerging diplomatic powerhouse in the global south, may benefit from Russia and China's leaders being absent this weekend, since it wants to use the summit to champion a theme of inclusive global governance reform. It would not want the focus to be solely in criticism of Western double standards in the Middle East and Ukraine. And you know what? This is possible. This is possible that China has decided that, you know what? Why don't we step back into the background and let Brazil take center stage, sort of as a way of gaining diplomatic brownie points with Brazil. That's a possibility too. Okay, so there are various possibilities of why Xi Jinping is not there. I know what we want it to mean, but what we want it to mean is not necessarily what it actually means. So we have to be very careful. We have to be, as I always say, we have to especially be careful, especially skeptical of people who say what we want to hear. And so, and this is kind of similar to that. Let's be careful not to assume that this whole thing means what we want it to mean. The hosts have a set of concrete proposals: the green energy transition, cooperation on vaccines, and expanding most favored nation status to all countries in the World Trade Organization. Patriota denied that new multipolarity, a world in which many different cooperative alliances are formed, was inherently unstable, arguing it was unilateralism that had been the more disruptive force. There is strong support. Well, actually, it is unstable because, as we saw under the Biden regime, right, that when America is weak, there is instability in the world. We saw this in Ukraine. We saw this in the Middle East. We saw this between China and Taiwan. We saw this in North Korea. Yeah, so when America is weak, there's instability in the world. So what this former foreign minister of Brazil is saying is, of course, not true. Of course, he's trying to sell the idea of BRICS, so you would expect him to say this kind of a thing. There is strong support for preserving multilateralism, but that does not mean that we need to preserve it at all. As it stands, Brazil is arguing we shouldn't wait for another world war or something of that nature or scale to start reforming. Unless there is a strong movement towards reform now, we run the risk of reaching a tipping point. Okay. All right, so a few other people are talking here. And here, there we go. Nevertheless, Xi's decision to stay away is puzzling, given the US retreat from its global leadership role has provided a golden opportunity for China to pick up the mantle. Yes, yes, that is a very good point. Yes, so what's happening in China? Yes, it is puzzling. And I think The Guardian makes a very good point here. Xi's decision to stay away is puzzling, given the US's retreat from its global leadership role has provided a golden opportunity for China to pick up the mantle. And until now, China seemed to be fairly eager to do exactly that, to pick up the mantle of global leadership. Remember Xi Jinping was one of the main speakers at the World Economic Forum in Davos a couple of years back, or was it a few years back? I think that was before COVID, maybe. So maybe it was more than a few years back. But he made a very clear point that China represents stability and America represents instability. That was unpredictability. This was his point back then. I've forgotten exactly what the date was. And so at that point, it was very clear that China had a strong desire to take up where they saw America as leaving off. But now China, or at least Xi Jinping, is in the background, at least for this weekend. We'll have to see how this follows. But you know what? Another interesting story out of or regarding China is that the Chinese foreign minister, in private meetings with the European Union, said, "We will not allow Russia to lose the war in Ukraine." Bam, that is that is something of a statement, all right? We will not allow Russia to lose the war. Let's see here, China, Russia, Ukraine. Let me pull that story up just quickly here. Here we go, on the South China Morning Post. Okay, well, we don't want to go to South China Morning Post. Okay, let's go to CNN on this one. Now, that is a statement. And normally in diplomacy, you don't see this kind of statement. Here we are on CNN now. China tells EU it can't accept Russia losing its war against Ukraine, official says. Okay. And this is Wang Yi, the foreign minister of China, who's kind of regarded as a wolf warrior or wolf diplomat. He's always very aggressive, of course, and he kind of reminds me of Gromyko, the former foreign minister, or I think he was that Gromyko was the foreign minister of Soviet Union for a long time. I'm trying to get this out to kill this. Okay, here we go. Here we go. All right, so Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi told the European Union's top diplomat that Beijing can't accept Russia losing its war against Ukraine, as this could allow the United States to turn its full attention to China, an official briefed on the talks said, contradicting Beijing's public position of neutrality in the conflict. The admission came during what the official said was a 4-hour meeting with EU Foreign Affairs Chief Kaja Kallas, I guess you pronounce that, on Wednesday in Brussels that featured tough but respectful exchanges. Now, in diplomacy, tough but respectful means they almost came to throwing food at each other. That's what it means. Covering a broad range of issues from cybersecurity, rare earths, to trade imbalances, Taiwan, and Middle East. The official said Wang's private remarks suggested Beijing might prefer a protracted war in Ukraine that keeps the United States from focusing on its rivalry with China. Yes, that sounds right. They echo concerns of critics of China's policy that Beijing has geopolitically much more at stake in the Ukrainian war than its admitted position of neutrality. So for America, then, Trump needs to somehow find a way to end that war. Right now, Trump has sort of stepped back and said, hey, you know what? I tried. They won't listen to me. So let's let them fight it out for a while and see what happens. But like this official said, Beijing might prefer a protracted war in the Ukraine that keeps the United States from focusing on its rivalry with China. Yes, I think that is dead on. On Friday, at a regular Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs briefing, spokeswoman Mao Ning was asked about the exchange, which was first reported in the South China Morning Post, and reaffirmed Beijing's long-standing position on the 3-year war. China is not party to the Ukraine issue, Mao said. China's position on the Ukraine crisis is objective and consistent. That is, negotiations, ceasefire, and peace. A prolonged Ukraine crisis serves no one's interest. Okay, well, she's a spokesperson, so, what does she do? She lies. Okay. And I think this private conversation that the EU official is leaking sounds much more accurate. Okay. I think that's actually what China is. She added that China wanted a political. I gotta skip that. China's public statements on the Ukraine war mask a more complex picture. Just weeks before Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Chinese leader Xi Jinping declared a no-limits partnership with Moscow, and since then, political and economic ties have strengthened. China has put itself forward as a possible peacemaker, but as CNN has previously reported, the stakes are high for Beijing, not least potentially losing a major partner in Russia. China has also rejected growing accusations it is providing near military support to Russia. Ukraine has sanctioned several Chinese companies for providing Russia drone components and technology for use in missile production. After a record assault in the Ukraine capital Kyiv on Friday, Ukraine's foreign minister posted pictures, he said, were the fragments of Garan 2 combat drone launched by Russia. One image displayed part of the drone's alleged fuselage, which said the device was made in China on June 20th. Somebody added that I guess this is the foreign minister, right? That added that night, the Chinese consulate general's building in Odessa suffered major damage as a result of Russian strikes on the city. There is no better metaphor for how Putin continues to escalate his war and terror while involving others, including North Korean troops, Iranian weapons, and some Chinese manufacturers. Security in Europe, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific is inextricably linked. Well, so our concern primarily is with the fact that President Trump needs to bring that war to an end quickly so that the United States can focus on China and the Korean Peninsula and South China Sea. Yeah, we have a lot. We have a list of demands, don't we? Yes, but it's a war that never should have happened in the first place. It's a bad war. It's not a war that God wants, and for sure. And it needs to end as quickly as possible. And I understand President Trump's frustration, but let's pray that God can guide him somehow and inspire him with wisdom to bring this war to an end. Somehow he has to develop some kind of leverage with Putin, especially, I think, right? With Zelensky, I mean, already Pete Hegseth has suspended certain weapons shipments. So already Ukraine is being put under the thumb, but Putin is another matter. But we can hopefully let's do this diplomatically so that the war can be brought to some kind of it doesn't have to be an end necessarily. And I've long advocated what many other people are now saying, that is the Korean model of having a armistice. Okay, wherever the front line is right now, that's the line, okay? And we're going to have an armistice, and we're just going to pull back maybe a mile and a half or something, maybe 2 kilometers, and we're going to stop shooting at each other, and we're going to have a demilitarized zone between our two sides, and we'll see how the diplomatic aspect develops maybe over the next years. In the case of Korea, 70 plus years, 72 years, is it? And time will take care of the situation. So, yeah, okay. So that's the other story that we have from regarding China, that they don't want Russia to lose their war. Okay. All right, back to the BRICS. The BRICS summit. They're going to denounce Trump tariffs. Whoop-de-doo. Okay. Whoop-de-doo. All right, that's the news on their agenda for this weekend, if you want to know what they're doing. All righty then. Meanwhile, remember yesterday, President Trump said he expected to hear from Hamas within 24 hours, and it looks like he did. Hamas signals openness to U.S.-brokered Gaza truce, raising hopes for peace. Excellent, right? Excellent. The terror group expressed openness to a ceasefire, but several points of contention remained. I'm not the House. Let me make sure my eyes are open here. Okay, not the House. The Hamas terror group has announced it delivered a positive response to the U.S.-brokered ceasefire proposal for Gaza, fueling hopes for progress toward ending its deadly conflict with Israel. The Hamas movement has completed its internal consultations as well as discussions with Palestinian factions and forces regarding the latest proposal by the mediators to halt the aggression against our people in Gaza, the group said in a statement. The movement has delivered its response to the brotherly mediators, which was characterized by a positive spirit. The statement added, Hamas is fully prepared with all seriousness to immediately enter a new round of negotiations on the mechanism for implementing this framework. So I think that's a yes, right? That sounds like a yes. They've said an awful lot, trying not to sound like they're saying yes, but I think they're saying yes. However, Palestinian officials from a group allied with Hamas told Reuters that significant obstacles remain, including concerns over the flow of humanitarian aid, access through the Rafah crossing into Egypt, and a clear timetable for Israeli troop withdrawals. So, flow of humanitarian aid. Remember, though, that we've seen up until now that a lot of the humanitarian aid has actually been taken by Hamas and has been distributed in a very unequal manner. In other words, it gets distributed first to their people, especially to their leaders, and then to people who are loyal to Hamas, and sometimes, in some cases, not at all. For example, some years back, Europe provided pipes that Hamas could use to create a system of delivering water to people in Gaza. But Hamas had a better use for those pipes: missiles for Israel, missiles that they would shoot at Israel. So that kind of illicit use of humanitarian aid has been a serious problem. So now Hamas wants to make sure that it keeps getting humanitarian aid. Well, okay, but what for? Who's going to get it? This is a problem. And the Rafah crossing into Egypt, right? So Egypt also has a border with Gaza. Has a border with Gaza, and there's a crossing there, a gate there called the Rafah crossing. And Egypt likes to keep it closed for various reasons. So now Hamas say one of the obstacles is that they want to have that crossing opened into Egypt. Hamas's statement comes after President Donald Trump announced on July 1 a final proposal for a 60-day ceasefire in the nearly 21-month war between Israel and Hamas, saying he expected swift responses from both sides. Trump has been pushing for a peace agreement to end the conflict. My representatives had a long, productive meeting with the Israelis today on Gaza. Israel has agreed to the necessary conditions to finalize the 60-day ceasefire, during which time we will work with all parties to end the war, Trump stated in a post on social media, etc. The Qataris and Egyptians, who have worked very hard to help bring peace, will deliver this final proposal. I hope for the good of the Middle East that Hamas takes this deal, because it will not get better, it will only get worse, in all caps. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is scheduled to meet Trump in Washington on July 7th, has yet to publicly comment on Trump's announcement. The Israeli leader has repeatedly demanded the disarmament of Hamas, an issue the terrorist group believed to be holding 28 living hostages has so far refused to address. An Egyptian security official told Reuters that Egypt, which is mediating the ceasefire talks with Qatar, had reviewed Hamas's response and saw encouraging indications that a deal could be close, though some of Hamas's demands still required further discussion. Trump has said he intends to be very firm with Netanyahu on securing a rapid ceasefire in Gaza, while noting that the Israeli prime minister also wants to see the fighting end. The war in Gaza erupted on October 7, 2023. Yeah, we know about that. Okay. Okay, yeah, we know about that. Okay. Right. Okay, we know about that. Well, they're just giving us the history. All right, so that is the situation in Gaza. So we'll see what happens over this weekend. Hope that everything works out there. And then let's see what's going on with let's go to Epoch Times and see what's going on there. Let's see. Oh, yes, this situation in central Texas where flash flooding has already caused 24 people to die. And there's a private Christian retreat that had, I guess, the number of people attending was something above 700. And about 25 of the girls are missing. It looks like they were washed away in the flood. And anyway, the National Guard is out. They've been evacuating people. They've evacuated a lot of people. But 24 people have been confirmed dead so far, and 20 girls are missing, still in the flood waters. So it's a very terrible situation happening down there in central Texas. I think maybe the lesson for us, always be aware of your surroundings and especially the weather, um, especially if you are adults who are involved in this kind of a camp. 700 people, that's a lot of people. And I wonder maybe if it was too big to really um, handle an emergency situation like this. Apparently, they couldn't get everybody evacuated in time. Say Texas families plead for information on more than 20 girls missing from the summer camp after floods here, and then California's Madre fire explodes in size, so California is burning again, right? Okay, and also in Manitoba there, right? Trump signed his bill. Okay, we know about that. And 3,500-mile journey. We talked about this yesterday. Okay, fireworks families. Okay, nine key Supreme Court decisions from this term. Okay, because the Supreme Court has ended its term, and the new term won't begin until October. Okay, so then what we know about alligator Alcatraz, I guess we know that there are a lot of alligators. And China's Africa experiment with electronic vehicles sparking concern among local automakers. Chinese motor vehicles companies are setting up shop across Africa and dumping cheap EVs as domestic market shrinks and tariffs bite. All right. Yeah, China has been exploiting Africa in many ways now for a number of years. Okay. So anyway, it looks like everybody had a fairly peaceful July 4th, which I'm glad. I was concerned that perhaps some terror group might use that as a chance or to make a name for themselves by making some kind of an attack. But apparently that was thwarted or didn't happen. Or I imagine, the people whose job it is to stop those things were able to stop any kind of threat that came up. Let's look at Newsmax, and Newsmax also has all the parades. And it says just half of Democrats call themselves patriots. I don't know. That sounds like a propaganda thing to me. I don't know. Okay. New York City protesters burn flag, chant, expletive the fourth. Okay. And so President Trump signed his mega bill during a White House picnic. Okay, he's a showman, that's for sure. That's good. Politics is a theater in a lot of cases. A lot of cases. When a political leader speaks, for example, the people who are running his campaign or running the White House are always concerned about what he's wearing, what's in his background, who's going to be in the camera shot. If there are people sitting behind him, who's going to be sitting behind him? What signs are they carrying? There are all sorts of things that go into making sure that the images that come out of that situation are favorable to the candidate or president who is speaking. So there is a big aspect of theater, and I think that probably started with the 1960 campaign between John Kennedy and Richard Nixon. That was the first time a presidential debate was televised, and Nixon didn't understand this, and he didn't look very well on television, and that was one reason apparently that he lost. There were other reasons, and also anyway. All right, let's see here. U.S. threatens 70% tariffs on EU farm exports. We'll see what happens with that. Zelensky prods Trump to strengthen the protection. So he's under the thumb and he's squirming. Yep. So Putin needs to come under the thumb as well if President Trump is going to be able to find a solution to that, to Ukraine war. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to happen right now. But really, let's pray that President Trump can somehow have God's guidance, somehow have wisdom, be given wisdom. Or maybe, like I've been saying, maybe either Zelensky or Putin has to somehow pass from the scene. And that can happen in many ways. Doesn't necessarily have to mean that their life is ended, but somehow pass from the scene. Uh, maybe that will cause the situation the log jam, shall we say, to break. All right, let's see here. Analysts are saying, and Ukraine aid doesn't hurt U.S. readiness. Who are the analysts? Shall we check who the analysts are? I think I can guess, but let's check and see. Okay. All right. Stopping Ukraine aid conflicts with analysis. Okay. All right. Who are they quoting here? Senior military officials shows that a military aid package for Ukraine canceled by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the Department of Defense earlier this week over concerns about low munition stockpiles would not have jeopardized the U.S. military's ammunition supply. So it's an internal military analysis, I guess. Okay. Right. In the review, which began earlier this year, okay, so we know about that. The review also concluded that continuing to assist Ukraine would not drain supplies below a required level necessary for military readiness, the officials commented. But we want that war to come to an end. And it would seem prudent to stop sending weapons. That seems like a pretty good way to end the war quickly. Not necessarily that Russia wins, but that Ukraine has to sue for peace. All right, let's see here. Trump plans a UFC event at White House for America's 250th. Yeah, we know about that. National park fees to rise for foreign visitors. We got that yesterday. Okay, let's see here. Let's see what's new. Never mix fireworks and alcohol. Expert. Really? Does it take an expert to say that? Expert. Who's the expert that stood up and said that? I'd like to know. Let's see. George Zambelli, owner of Zambelli Fireworks. Okay, so it's the owner of a fireworks company. Well, why don't you say so? Okay, why don't you say fireworks company owner never makes fireworks with an alcohol? I mean, that would make more sense as a headline. I mean, expert. I could have said that. All right. Let's see here. What else have we got going here? Okay. Fleischman bill win is all Trump. Yeah. So now, like I said yesterday, he owns whatever happens with that bill, whatever effect it has. If it's good, he's going to get the credit. If it's bad, he's going to have to take the responsibility. Okay. Let's see here. Group C, mega bill has window to repeal gun law. Okay, that's good. Top oil executive fell out of a window in Moscow. Wow, that seems to happen quite often to rich people in Moscow, doesn't it? Yeah, got to watch out for those windows, especially the ones that have for the offices that rich people use. Okay. All right. BRICS nations to denounce Trump tariffs. Okay, go ahead. See what good it does you. And here, Trump not going to let Mamdani destroy New York City. I think we already had that as well. So forth and so on. Okay, I think that's about it. Okay. And so then, where shall we go? Okay, we have some time left. Let's go to, Fox. Breitbart. Oh yeah, let's go. We haven't done Breitbart yet. Okay, let's go to Breitbart. Okay. Breitbart is fairly easy to predict. Let me close this ad. Okay. President Trump signs big, beautiful bill, makes law of the land, most popular bill ever signed. Uh, 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 Breitbart, come on. In the Senate, J.D. Vance, the vice president, had to come in and cast a vote because the vote was 50-50. And in the House, it was what, 2018 to 214 or something like that, about 4 votes difference. Most popular bill ever signed? Which which poll are they looking at? All right. Breitbart. Oh my goodness. Breitbart didn't used to be this way. I think they used to be a little more low key, shall we say. Okay, let's see here. Right. And look at this. Rhino Brian Fitzpatrick announces himself as new villain after voting against BBB. So the definition of rhino is that you disagree with President Trump? Mm, maybe I better change my voting registration. Oh wait, I'm registered in Virginia where we don't declare party affiliation. Well, that's good. Okay. All right, let's see here. Gen Z, least proud generation to be American. Yeah, yeah. Really? That's 1960s. People were not so proud. 60s, 70s, but I guess Breitbart has its sources on that. All right, and they're also talking about the situation in Central Texas there with the girls. And Kathy Griffin, remember, she's the one who she identifies as a comedian. Let's put it that way. She identifies as a comedian. And remember, right after President Trump won his first term, or soon after that, she published a photograph of herself carrying something that looked like the head of President Trump. So this was violence, right? This was violence, calling for violence against President Trump. But that was not censored as I recall. That was okay. But it was that kind of thing, and the whole series and the whole gamut of things by the Democratic Party that followed that, which led up to the situation in Butler, where some guy thought it would be a good idea that he could be a hero. He could be a hero for the left by removing President Trump from the stage. And well, I'm assuming, right now that what we think we know about that is actually what happened. But the Democrats are fully responsible for that incident and for also what happened on the golf course as well, where there was a guy hiding in the bush waiting to do something against President Trump. So, Kathy Griffin now, she's now apparently wildly unrecognizable on the streets of LA. Okay. All right, let's see here. And all right. Yeah, and Hollywood is, suffering right now because we're going through this transition period where their idea of America is being denied and is changing to the idea of America, of patriotic Americans. Okay. All right, let's see here. And then the UFC fight at the White House. All right. Trump zigzags into semi-amnesty politics. What's that? What's that here? All right, yeah, okay. President Donald Trump floated a form of semi-amnesty for illegal hotel, restaurant, and farm workers during a victory speech in Iowa late Thursday, but he also said a bitterly divided Congress would have to write the legislation. We're working on legislation right now, he told the friendly crowd as he bobbed and weaved between business supporters and pro-deportation voters, between migrants' impact on jobs and crimes, and between current poll ratings and future turnout in the 2026 midterm election. But the main problem with having, Biden bring in so many people was that nobody knows who they are. And there are criminals. There are many violent criminals. Well, maybe many, I don't know, but well, yeah, many, because the total number was so big. And so there may be tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of criminals because the total number was so large. So my point always has been, well, yeah, let's find those people and let's kick them out. Let's kick them out. Kicking out farm workers, of course, we need to know if farm workers come over, we need to know who they are and what their criminal history is, if any, and that kind of thing. But those people should be allowed to come in and work, I think. But of course, the problem there is that if they're paid less than minimum wage, if you're going to have a minimum wage, and I'm actually against minimum wage, but if you're going to have minimum wage, let's hold everybody to it. Okay, you can't just say, okay, well, for factories, but not for farms, not for those kind of things. All right, let's see here. So yeah, President Trump is kind of doing a tightrope walk. That is true. And we'll see how he handles that. U.S. Happy Independence Day, 18 big, beautiful Trump victories. Countdown to 250th. It is a countdown. And I hope we can have a really nice 250th celebration. I hope. I would like that very much, especially since it's in a year when there's midterm elections going on. Yeah, we need a really nice celebration so that people will feel good about President Trump and about the Republican Party and go out and support their local Republican candidate. So yes, I hope we do have a very nice celebration. And let's see here, leftist South Korea president seeks closer ties to North Korea, China, and Russia. And by the way, just a while ago, as I was preparing, I saw that this is in the local Korean press, that later this month, the president is going to hand out money to all citizens. Yes. In other words, I'm not getting any, but not that I want any. I wouldn't want any, no. Let me go to the, let's see here. All right, I guess it's, all right, I guess its time was up. Okay. So anyway, yeah, I think it's not a lot of money. I think they're handing out something like $250 or something like that, or maybe it's $200. So it's not a whole bunch of money, but still, it's what socialist politicians do, right? Yeah, here, take money, take money, take money. So we'll see what it does. Yeah. Okay, Iranian regime clamping down on own people to maintain power. That's what dictators do. And Bukele posts prison video of this guy to dispute lawsuit claiming mistreatment. Apparently the lawsuit said he was tortured, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. All right, let's see here.